Hey Creep Freaks, Ren here. Got a great story today called The Yearbook. Very quick plug for my book Creepy Horror. It's now on sale for 99 cents on Amazon. If you've been on the fence about picking it up, now's your chance to get it for cheaper than a cup of coffee. So, about The Yearbook. I wrote this story in response to Ronald Dahl and the stuff going on with his books and the sensitivity readers. As someone who writes fiction, especially horror fiction, this notion of going back, especially with historical authors and changing their words, I get it from a commercial perspective, but it still doesn't sit right with me. So the idea with the yearbook is really this idea of sensitivity readers, of thought police going amok. So let's get into it. The Yearbook, written and read by Ren Bryant. Would you look at them? It's what's her name and what's his face. Can you believe it? I mean, look at them. Hugging like that, smiling like that. That's offensive. It's intimidating. Maybe even an unwanted sexual advance. I'm going to have to talk to the principal about this. No, there won't be any touching. Not in this year's yearbook. Not on my watch. This year, I'm going to make sure the yearbook is safe. Not like last year. Last year was an abomination. You should have seen it. Every single page was offensive. People touching other people, a picture of Ralph Thornton committing mass cultural appropriation by eating a plate of tacos, Ted Baska offending Muslims and Jews with a Bacon Rules t-shirt. Can you believe such a thing? And get this, they actually put a panther on the cover. I mean, I don't care if that's our school mascot or not, it's wrong. They took a panther and gave him a friendly human smile. Can you imagine such a thing? What would the panther say? No one should be offended opening a yearbook, even the animals. That's why I got myself a seat on the yearbook committee as its sensitivity reader. Well, I didn't quite get myself the seat. I tried, but students protested and convinced the school administrators to keep me away. That's what they always do when I try to fix something at the school. They tell me to calm down, that it's not a big deal, to stop complaining and stop being offended. They say I'm offended about everything. Everything and everyone, according to Scott Tomlinson. I told Scott it was offensive to say that, and by the way, I'm not really like that. Anyway, my parent called the school and she was able to get me a spot on the yearbook committee. And before you come at me, she is how my parent identifies. I'm allowed to use that pronoun. Words matter. That's why I won't call her mom. No one should say mom or dad, those horribly offensive and non-inclusive words. You see, my parent is a sensitivity reader at a publisher in New York City. I don't know which one. I think it starts with an M or an S or something. Their logo's a squiggly line. My parent says it's one of the big ones, though, and she never lies. My parent says she has the most powerful and important job in the world. She can change the words people use, change what they say. She can force them to remove words from their vocabulary they may not want to remove, to erase the words entirely from their mouths. She said she could even go back in time and make it so they never said the words in the first place. I think her job's the coolest thing since sliced bread. I want to be just like her. Yeah, my parent's a she/her. I wish I had powers like her. I wish I could get rid of all the offensive stuff like she does. Eliminate the people calling me dork and turd and telling me I'll never have any friends. When word went around the school that I was on the yearbook committee, the whispers started. I heard them. I heard the people snickering and pointing at me as I walked by. They said, "Watch out, here comes the police." That's what they call me sometimes, the police. Bobby and Jill and Tommy would make siren sounds as I passed by in the hallway. I'd look back and give them the stink eye. They'd smush their face and stick out their tongues. They were always bugging me. Once, Bobby held up a comic book for Tommy to see and pointed and said, "Look at this fat, ugly beast on the cover." I shuddered, but I didn't say anything. It wasn't until Tommy once said, "Boy, it sure is hot out today," that I turned around and yelled at him. I said he couldn't say boy, that's offensive. Then I stormed off and cried in the bathroom until the guidance counselor found me. Every night before I go to sleep, I clasp my hands together and pray. My parents said we're militantly atheists. She said atheists are more intelligent, and we're both intelligent people, aren't we? I said, yes, we are. My parents says the creeping theological state is killing the liberal foundations of America. I didn't know what she meant, but I nodded in agreement. I prayed that I could be like my parent and stop all the offensive things in this world. My parent knows I whisper a prayer before bed. She doesn't like it, but she doesn't disallow it. Just know there's no tooth fairy, my parent always tells me before she gives me a pill for my anxiety. I didn't know I had anxiety, but she says, of course I do. If I didn't, why would I pray? In the morning, something changed when I woke up. I don't know what it was, but I felt different. Tingly all over my body. It's kind of like butterflies I used to get in my stomach when I saw pictures in the newspaper of things no one would talk to me about. My parent canceled the newspaper because of that. She said it was all too much to bear. At first, I thought I had the virus. I didn't want to tell my parents about it, though, not when today was the first day of the yearbook committee. So I tested myself in the bathroom, stuck one of those sticks way up my nose. I overheard once somebody calling it a brain tickler, but I thought that was offensive because it made light of the situation. My parent, she tests me nearly every week, so I know the drill. I take a shower and wait for the results. It was negative. On the school bus, I heard all sorts of awful things. You wouldn't believe it. I bent over in my seat and clutched my midsection. I thought I was going to be sick, both because of what I was hearing and because my whole body felt so weird. I tried looking out the window to distract myself, but I saw a homeless man in a tent, and that upset me even more. So instead, I stared at my eco-certified merino wool and eucalyptus tree fiber shoes. When I got to the school, I had to walk down Freshman Hall. That's the worst place in the whole school. Definitely not a safe space. Unfortunately, I have to go down that hallway to get to science class. Every time, I would do the same routine. Clutch my books tight to my chest, hold my breath, and walk as fast as I can. At least Bobby and Jill and Tommy are in the same grade. I could tell them off, tell them how offensive they were being, but I can't do that with freshmen. I can't say a word because they'll come at me with all sorts of names and laugh at me. I tried it once and I broke down crying. I sat in the counselor's office the rest of the day until my parent picked me up. As far as I'm concerned, the freshmen are the most offensive of all. Oh my, I just realized. How horrible a phrase. How offensive. Freshmen? Really? Could the name be any worse? It's making me anxious just thinking about it. Where's the women? Where's the other genders? Where's the non-gendered? I must take this up with the principal later. This is unacceptable. Halfway down the hallway, my entire being buzzed and vibrated. It felt like I was standing on one of those vibrating plates. I can't believe the things I saw, the words I heard. Words of toxic masculinity. I nearly fainted. Then, I overheard something that created a megaton explosion within my body. Every cell bursting and going supernova. My mother and father were on a date Saturday night, one of the freshmen said. Enough! The words carried down the hallway. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. I didn't mean to scream, it just came out. I couldn't help it. The talk of a mother and father sent me over the edge. If a student would have said parents, that would have been fine. But mother and father? Those words are offensive. The vibrating that was in my body surged from my core to my extremities. My bones rattled, my limbs shook. It wasn't merely anger that was inside of me, but something else. Something felt more powerful. I felt powerful. The other students noticed my shaking and formed a circle around me and the other student who said those horrible, nasty words. You! I shouted. I gave dagger eyes to the offending student, the one who said mother and father. You cannot say that! You cannot use that language! It's offensive! The words echoed off the lockers and a chant of fight, fight, fight broke out. I didn't want to fight, but without a thought, my right hand raised up and pointed at the offending student. My arm convulsed in twitchy spasms as the power within me rose to Gaia levels. My index finger made stabbing motions towards the student, pointing over and over and over. From my fingertips came a sonic wave that cut through the air, a blast of sensitivity that sent hairdos flying and leaves of paper rolling down the hall like tumbleweeds. No more offensive words! I shouted as I pointed. The student's mouth erased, lips disappeared and turned to generic pink flesh. My finger was the eraser, taking away the offending lips, stopping the student from speaking further words of meanness. No more talk of mother and father. The student's eyes flashed terror. His jaw flexed to open, but there was nothing to open. The student clawed at his throat, touched his skin where his lips used to be. The other kids in the circle slowly backed away. They didn't scream. They didn't say a word. They could only stare in terror and fear. She's a freak! One of them shouted. You don't know my pronouns! I yelled back. I raised my finger and pointed at the student who called me the name. Sensitivity waves again pulsed through the air, and I did that student the same as the other, erasing his mouth. There would be no more bad words. There would be no more offensive speech. Books dropped. Screaming ensued. A crush of freshmen headed towards the exits. One flipped on the fire alarm, setting off a blaring cacophony that made people cover their ears. I stood still, soaking in my power, coming to understand that my prayer had been answered. A teacher came into the hallway, asking what all the commotion was about. He said he was trying to teach the class about black holes. Offensive! I shouted. A finger wag and his mouth was gone. The teacher ran back into the classroom with tears streaming down his face and locked the door. I heard the screaming of 30 students, voices strained in terror, someone yelling to dial 911. Students smushed their face against the slit window in the classroom door trying to look at me. I smiled and I looked around the empty hallway. I imagined myself as one of the gunslingers in the Old West, the sheriff there to take control back from the evildoers, the ones who cause offensive pain with their existence. The world must be tamed, I thought. No one should ever feel uncomfortable or have to hear nasty, horrible words that cause harm. I thought of myself as the avenger for the offended. I would sweep away the wickedness. I would be the world sensitivity reader. A teacher came towards me. He said I needed to calm down and that there was something wrong with me, that maybe if I would come with him to the nurse, he could help. I felt he was trying to mansplain to me. I gave him a menacing look, furrowing my brow, trying to channel my energy to deal with his offensiveness. I stabbed my index finger at him and didn't just remove his mouth, but I erased his entire face. Over the school intercom, I heard the words, "The bus is late to Brooklyn." That was code for lockdown. I heard the automatic deadbolts on the doors click around me. It sounded like prison cells slamming closed. Billy came running down the stairs. He skidded to a stop when he saw me. Someone opened a door from one of the classrooms and told him to hurry up inside. But before Billy could make another move, I waved my finger in his direction and took off his face too. He didn't say something offensive right now, but I know he would have eventually done so. That's how Billy was. His body stumbled forward before tripping and crashing onto the floor. His head landed with a sickening crack on the vinyl floor. I was in control now. I was the great arbitrator of speech. There would be no more offensiveness from Billy ever again. There would be no more offensiveness from anyone again. Outside, I heard police sirens and the sounds of tires screeching to a halt. I walked to the front of the junior high and looked out its double doors. There, a line of cop cars stood at different angles. No real pattern really, just wherever the driver decided to skid to a stop. I saw doors open, police officers dressed in blue uniforms and bulletproof vests. Some had guns drawn, some were on their cell phones. One had a megaphone. Next to him was my parent, Helen. I smiled. Finally someone who understands the hurtful nature of speech, someone whose job it was to fix the offensiveness, to put it right so no one would be harmed again by antiquated language that serves no purpose. There is no fat, there is no skinny, there is no mother, there is no father. There are no descriptions anymore because descriptions bring pain. My parent will help me stop these people and their offensiveness. Rachel, Helen said through the police loudspeaker. Rachel, I need you to listen to me. Can you do that, baby? She paused and I can see the police telling her some things. Rachel, please, come out. No more, baby, no more. I opened one of the double doors so I can talk back to my parent. I'm not your baby, I yelled, sticking my head out the door but keeping the rest of my body inside. Please, Rachel, I can't stop them if you don't cooperate and come out. It's your job, I yelled back. It's your job to stop them. It's your job to stop bad things. Rachel, I know life is tough, and there are a lot of things that cause harm, Helen said. A lot of words that are harmful. I tried to shield you from that. That's my role as a parent. We can try to work together towards a kinder tomorrow, but not everything's offensive. We can't stop all offensive things. She paused again. More police chatted with her, while some in the background grabbed shotguns. I couldn't believe my parent was listening to them, that she would stand shoulder to shoulder with these people who were responsible for so much harm in the world. I think you're wrong, I said. I think we should be able to stop people from being offensive. I think we should stop people from saying words that hurt, no matter their intent. We should be able to go back and erase all the stuff that has happened that has caused people harm. We must act. And I'm like you now. I have the power to stop hurtful words. No, baby, my parent said into the megaphone. The police kept the trigger depressed as she sobbed. I began to feel myself wanting to comfort her, and a tear rolled down my cheek. But then I thought about what she said. Baby. It's offensive. It really is. I thought my parent would help me. I thought she would understand. And if I couldn't trust my parent to help me make the world a better place, then I don't know that I could trust anyone anymore. I couldn't trust anyone to not be offensive, to not cause pain. I sighed, wiped the tears away, and pointed my finger in my parents' direction. I had no other choice. She was now part of the problem. She was the same as all the others, the ones who would accept the world where hurtful words continue. I watched as my parents' lips faded to nothing but skin. It happened as quickly as blinking. As her eyebrows raised to the top of her head when she realized she no longer had a mouth, I stabbed my finger at her again and erased her eyes and nose. Her rectangular black plastic glasses dropped from her round face. The lenses popped out as it hit the asphalt. Without an ability to breathe, her body jerked and twitched before it finally fell to the ground. The police around her didn't move. They didn't move a muscle. Their faces were confused, shocked, aghast. Someone threw up and another dropped his gun. The man who was standing next to her looked at me. His mouth hung open and he blinked in disbelief. I saw the pump of a shotgun from one of the police behind him, and I pointed and pointed and pointed. Every finger stab was a well-crafted arrow, erasing face after face. I went right down the line from right to left. The only sounds were guns and bodies hitting the pavement. I stood in the lobby of the junior high and stared at the body count. I was sad, sure, but in my heart, I knew they were all guilty of being offensive in some way or another, just like all the others. Even my parent. She no longer seemed to believe the things she once taught me. I exited the school, walked past the cop cars with their sirens still flashing, stepped over faceless corpses and headed home. As I walked down Main Street, I felt the people on the street looking at me, giving me that offensive glare, looking at me like I'm some problem child who should really be in school. I pointed my finger at all of them, every single one I passed, be them black, Asian, white, disabled, or able-bodied. Cars crashed and people screamed as corpses fell onto the street. I kept walking home. Home, the only safe place in the world, the only place I can get away from the offensiveness of life. But then again, can I? My parent, when she was alive anyways, always told me that culture evolves. In the kitchen, I take out a spoon and a chopstick. It's okay, the chopsticks were a gift from a Japanese friend. The spoon is for my eyes, the chopsticks for my ears. If I no longer see or hear, I'll no longer be offended. It's the only way. I decide ears first. With the fat end of the chopstick aimed at my head, I gently push it into my ear until I let out an ow when I hit my eardrum. I give it a couple of light taps to get a sense of what I'm dealing with. I accidentally hit my eardrums before with Q-tips, but that was so long ago I forgot how it felt. It's a weird sensation, like when I hit my funny bone and a shiver runs down my spine. I know this isn't going to be pleasant, but it's necessary. I suck in a deep breath and hold it. I pull the chopstick out of my ear, slowly, as if I'm pulling back the arrow of a bow. Then I stab it into my ear as fast and hard as possible. It goes through on the first try. There's a small popping noise, then hissing, the sound of air rushing in. I drop the chopstick as it tickles the nerves of my brain. Then I exhale. A pale mucousy yellow-white fluid drips from my ears and onto my shirt. Surprisingly, there isn't much pain. I replicate the procedure with the other ear. The sound of air is replaced by ringing that blocks out the world and its offensive sounds. Now, for the spoon in my eyes. This will be trickier, I think. The plan is to start on the outside of my eye and scoop them out one by one. I figure the hardest part will be severing the optic nerve. My worst fear is having my eyeball dangle off of my face. I decide to get the kitchen shears out just in case that happens. A quick snip should solve the problem if it occurs, though I'll have to fish around for the shears. I certainly wouldn't be able to look for them. Since I'm right-handed, I start with my left eye, crisscross. It's easier with a better working angle doing opposite hand and eye than trying to do my right eye with my right hand. The 1810 gauge stainless steel spoon is cold against my skin. My eye naturally wants to close when I get the spoon close to it, so I hold it open with my free hand. Like my ears, I take a breath and hold it. Then I go right in, shaking as the spoon digs behind my eye. Tears leak involuntarily and I let out a scream. I think I'm going to vomit from the pain and the weird sensation. The vision on my right eye goes all staticky as the spoon carves out a lane behind it. I pause when I feel the resistance of the optical nerve. But then I push harder with the spoon. My eyeball bulges out of its socket. I can see it with my left eye, my good eye, as it slowly pops out like a gopher sticking its head out of a hole. The eyeball shoots from its hole, a cannonball being fired across the kitchen as I scream in agony. My good eye watches as my formerly good eye bounces and stops when it hits the toe kick under the cabinets. I double over in pain. Goo and blood drip from the hole in my head. Snot dribbles from my nose. My remaining vision is distorted and blurry. Before I have time to think more, I repeat the process. I try to go as quickly as I can before I lose consciousness, but unfortunately, this one doesn't go as easy, and I have to fumble for the shears and cut off the hanging eye. The world becomes the blackness of a prehistoric cave. There's no thoughts, only a constant ringing that comes from between my ears. Drool drips from my mouth, snot from my nose, blood and goo from my eyes and ears. I crawl on my hands and knees, crawl like a baby. A baby. Didn't my parent call me that? I curl into a fetal position on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, and wish I had my parent back. I wish I could go back in time, not just before the time I killed her, but before I even existed. I wish I was back in the safety of the womb, that warm place where life is a comforting heartbeat and words have no meaning.